From a wild plant to a staple in all our courses, to the question, is it a fruit or a vegetable, comes tomatoes. Being a people's beloved edible does mean that it has a juicy background to it. But where do these plump love apples originate from? Would they still remain a primary ingredient in our dishes throughout the course of time? Let's uncover the secrets of our pomme d'amour. It initially originated in the northern and the southern American continents, and its former name was derived from its Mexican ancestry. Formerly called tomato, this word gave rise to its English derivation, calling it tomate. But how did it end up popular among all other continents and countries? Let's say tomatoes are the leftover legacy from the aftermath of the Spanish conquest. Previously, tomatoes were only grown on the American continents, as we said before. But after the Spanish conquered America, it evolved from tomato to tomate and to tomato. With this invasion and colonization, tomatoes began growing all over the European continent, and thus our juicy red essential was an item of the Columbian exchange. Now, to answer your demanded question of whether tomatoes are a fruit or a vegetable, sole answer: it depends. On what, you may ask? Tomatoes are one of the most versatile edible you could find. It has a diverse means of consumption, like your daily smoothie for clear and glowing skin, or sauces as a dip for your fries, and much more. So to speak, botanically, tomatoes are classified as fruits, or to be more specific, berries. But in its culinary form, it's a vegetable used in main courses and for the side dishes. Another fact about tomatoes that turn it as a personal favorite for our farmers is the fact that it can be cultivated all year long. So whether it's summer or spring or autumn or winter, you would have those handy tomatoes to save the day. Like all vegetables, even tomatoes have their own intriguing story. The wild ancestor of the tomato, Solanum pimpinellifolium, is a native to western South America. After the Spanish introduced the vegetable, people couldn't wait to pull out a total Gordon Ramsay on these plump fellas. 'Cause who doesn't love to experiment with tomatoes? They became used in Spanish food. In France, Italy, and Northern Europe, they were in huge demand. Originally, tomatoes were more used as an ornamental plant to vegify your houses. Sounds ridiculous, but not to those who believe the botanists when they claim that the tomato plant is in fact poisonous. Now, why would they say that? And now comes the belladonna plant into the picture. The botanists of those times misread the innocent berry as the poisonous nightshade plant, which happens to be a relative of the infamous belladonna plant. And one of the characteristics of the fruit made it even worse when the interaction of the tomato's acidic juice with pewter plates said otherwise. The leaves and fruit contain tomatine, which in large quantities would be toxic. However, the ripe fruit contains a much lower amount of tomatin than the immature fruit. And maybe that's why when people advise you to eat your greens, they do not recommend green tomatoes. Like always, there were myths regarding tomatoes back then too. Some claimed that the people who witnessed the ingestion of the tomato seeds were said to have divine powers. But after the Spanish brought the vegetable to Europe, what happened then? The large, lumpy variety of tomato, a mutation from a smoother, smaller fruit, originated in Mesoamerica and may be the direct ancestor of some modern cultivated tomatoes. The Aztecs too didn't hesitate to cultivate several varieties of tomato, with red tomatoes called zictomatl and green tomatoes called tomatl. And the humorous part of all these were the names they kept for the different species of vegetable when selling at the market. It ranged from large tomatoes, small tomatoes, leaf tomatoes, sweet tomatoes, large serpent tomatoes, nipple-shaped tomatoes, and more. The tomato probably arrived first in Seville, a major center of international trade, especially with Italy. In 1544, the Italian herbalist Mattioli referred to the yellow fruits of the tomato plant as mala aria, the golden apple, and later, in 1554, he mentioned a red variety. Dodewens, a Dutch herbalist, gave a detailed description in 1554, and the fruit earned a reputation as an aphrodisiac. This explains names such as pomme glamour in French, pomodoro in Italian, and the love apple in English. The transformation from herbal to a common culinary ingredient began slowly in the 1700s. The earliest known published Neapolitan recipe for tomato sauce, Spanish style, dates from 1692. Again, as we said earlier, in culinary terms, the tomato may be a vegetable, but is actually a fruit belonging to the family Solanaceae. And again, surprise, surprise, the tomato is actually a close relative of the potato, the capsicum pepper, and the aubergine. All this history. But does the traditional love apple see a future carrying its ubiquitous legacy? The answer is, why not? You see, tomatoes are not only famous for their versatility, which is quite marvelous, taking its ability to blend well with cheese, eggs, meat, and a wide range of herbs into consideration, but tomatoes, like the rest of the vegetable family, are quite nutritious too. They contain significant amounts of vitamin C and folate. Tomatoes are also the most important source in the diet of a red pigment called lycopene, which has antioxidant properties and may be anti-carcinogenic. Higher plasma lycopene levels are associated with reduced incidence of some cancers, especially prostate cancer. Uptake into the body depends on the type of product consumed. Lycopene uptake into the blood plasma is significantly higher when derived from heat-processed tomato products than when the same amount is eaten as fresh tomatoes. Likewise, the bioavailability of lycopene from heat-processed tomato juice is greater than from raw tomato juice. So whether it's raw or cooked, these veggies have your back for a healthy diet. No wonder why it's a ride-or-die companion of salads. National and international dietary guidelines recommend an increased consumption of fruits and vegetables so that we eat at least 5 servings a day. So don't think twice. Refresh your culinary skills and cook the next best meal out of tomatoes right now. Besides nutrition, tomatoes are also part of cultures around the world. So, tomatoes 1, other vegetables 0. Let's explore some cultures that revolve around tomatoes. The town of Buñol, Spain, annually celebrates La Tomatina, a festival centered on an enormous tomato fight. It is kind of like a relative to the Indian festival of Holi, but only much redder and juicy in comparison. Besides that, tomatoes also are a celebrity in the botanic world, with U.S. states adopting the tomato as a state fruit or vegetable, like New Jersey, for example. In 2009, the state of Ohio passed a law making the tomato the state's official fruit. Tomato juice has been the official beverage of Ohio since 1965. Alexander W. Livingston had also had a hand in popularizing the tomato in the late 19th century. His efforts are commemorated in Reynoldsburg with an annual tomato festival. Ever heard of throwing tomatoes? Yes, the metaphor means quite exactly what it says, according to people, since tomatoes are a popular non-lethal throwing weapon in mass protests. There's also a tradition or a joke revolving around this theory where throwing rotten tomatoes at bad performers on a stage during the 19th century was a common tradition. It still continues to be used as a metaphor to date. It's like you see a bad performer and you'd want to throw rotten tomatoes at them. Not good ones though, their value must be respected. But Rotten Tomatoes does not just have one meaning in itself. Rotten Tomatoes is an American review aggregation website for film and television. The name Rotten Tomatoes derives from the practice of audiences throwing rotten tomatoes when disapproving of a poor stage performance. Seems like they put a lot of thought into the name. Apart from its imprint on vocabulary, social status, and cultures, the cultivation pattern of tomatoes is actually quite simple. Like we said before, it's a farmer's favorite. Now, it won't really be a video about a tomato without talking about its characteristics from the very start, ranging from farming methods to its physical characteristics. Numerous varieties of the tomato plant are widely grown in temperate climates across the world, with greenhouses allowing for the production of tomatoes throughout all seasons of the year. Tomato plants typically grow 1 to 3 meters in height. They are vines that have a weak stem that sprawls and typically needs support. Indeterminate tomato plants are perennials in their native habitat, but are cultivated as annuals. Tomato plants are vines like your typical grapes, except with a few changes. Considering their adaptability when it comes to certain extents, it wouldn't be much of a surprise if a farmer saves up seeds of this particular plant. After all, nothing beats a tomato when it comes to being an all-rounder vegetable. Or fruit. No judgment. Do you think that there are more such facts and details that need to be covered in this berry? Do you think the never-ending debate of whether it's a fruit or a vegetable linger or cease to exist over time? But a collective opinion is sure that once tomatoes exit being the staple ingredient, there would forever be a void that no other fruit or vegetable can fill. Comment your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this video, we are sure you will love our next one, which is about all the different types of tomatoes that have ever existed. Click the link on the screen to watch that video right away. What's your bet on how many tomato kinds that you already know? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more such videos.